From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis and Josh Nelson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sox Machine Live. I am Josh Nelson of Sox Machine, as it is trade deadline, as you can see in the bottom graphic, and we have the ticker as far as all the trades that have been made so far. We are expecting more deals to be made, and we'll be covering all the activity for Major League Baseball over the next 2 hours. It's currently 3:30 p.m. Central Time. The MLB Trade Deadline is going to be at 5 p.m. Central Time. For this type of live show, we'll be paying attention to the comment section. Any questions that you guys may have, anything that you are currently seeing right now, as far as being posted on social media, any type of news would be greatly appreciated. If you could make me aware of what you guys are hearing as far as the latest rumors. I have multiple screens all over the place right now. But while I'm talking to you and paying attention to doing a live stream, sometimes I miss something. Like I said, I wish that I was like an octopus. I had like 8 arms, or I was a fly and had like thousands of eyes. I actually don't know if flies actually have thousands of eyes, but I wish at least I had multiple heads to meet up with the multiple screens to make sure that we're not missing anything before the trade deadline ends for the Chicago White Sox. And for the White Sox, I mean, it's already been a pretty busy trade deadline when you look at the moves that they have already made. And in order for the Chicago White Sox, it all started last week when they sent Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez to the Los Angeles Angels. We've already seen Giolito make a start for the Angels. We have also seen Reynaldo Lopez make a bullpen appearance. He hit 101 miles per hour out of the bullpen for the Angels, so he is feeling fresh right now for the Halos. And then the second move with Los Angeles, the White Sox sending Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly to the Dodgers. We have yet to see Kelly make a start for the Dodgers, but we have seen Joe Kelly make an appearance for the Dodgers. And then there was the trade of Kendall Graveman to the Houston Astros, in which the Houston Astros have been quite busy today. We'll talk about that in a moment. And finally, the biggest topic right now. So those are the 5 players the White Sox have moved. Again, in order: Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez, Joe Kelly and Lance Lynn, and Kendall Graveman. All pitchers. We have not seen any position players moved by the Chicago White Sox. We thought, or at least I thought, that maybe Tim Anderson could have been dealt today by the White Sox, but the White Sox released their lineup to start their series against the Texas Rangers, and Tim Anderson is in that lineup. The reason I thought there was maybe a chance that Anderson could be moved is that Bo Bichette of the Toronto Blue Jays twisted his knee as he was rounding first base. We haven't gotten exact details, and it has been reported yet by the Toronto Blue Jays and what the significance is and of the injury for Bichette and how long that he is going to be out for. And I thought, well, maybe that opens the door for the Blue Jays to pick up the phone and call Rick Hahn and acquire Tim Anderson. And once Bichette is healthy, they can move Anderson over to second base. Well, instead of that, the Blue Jays just kept making trades with the St. Louis Cardinals. The Blue Jays have already acquired their closer, the former Cardinals closer, Jordan Hicks, as Jordan Romano is on the injured list for the Blue Jays, so they needed help in high leverage situations out of the bullpen. So the Blue Jays addressed that, and they just picked up the phone and called the Cardinals again because they are also having a fire sale just like the Chicago White Sox, and they acquired Paul DeJong. That trade doesn't really pop up as far as the radar, as far as what St. Louis got in return for Paul DeJong. That looks mostly to be an opportunity to shed some serious payroll for St. Louis. So I can understand the White Sox not willing to move Tim Anderson in that type of deal, as it really, the return's just a 24-year-old pitcher who's in high A. That doesn't really help the Chicago White Sox. And if they need to save money, they could just decline Tim Anderson's option after the season for $1 million and then spend the $13 million that maybe they were planning on giving to Tim Anderson in 2024 to address other areas of the team. So those are the moves that the White Sox have made. But right now, as far as this trade deadline for White Sox fans, it is one name right now to pay most attention to, and that is Dylan Cease. Will Dylan Cease get dealt before the deadline? Right now, we are currently at 3:35 p.m. Central Time. Again, for those that are just joining us now on Sox Machine Live, welcome. I'm Josh Nelson from Sox Machine as we break down and cover what has already happened in the Major League Baseball trade conversations and what could happen before the deadline at 5 p.m. Central Time. But Dylan Cease seems to be a big name right now throughout Major League Baseball. And where could he go? We had the Houston Astros on this slide, and then the Astros acquired Justin Verlander from the New York Mets. What a fascinating turn of events there in the American League West. We'll talk about that in a moment when we take a look at the standings, as obviously the Rangers acquired Max Scherzer, and then the Houston Astros, to counter that, acquired Justin Verlander. The Baltimore Orioles seem to be the team that's having conversations, or at least rumored conversations, with the Chicago White Sox regarding Dylan Cease. The Orioles have 8 prospects in MLB.com's top 100. They certainly have the prospects to pull off such a move. Do they have the appetite, though? That has been the question out of Baltimore, is what are they willing to do? How much are they willing to move the prospects in their farm system to acquire more pitching depth? We have not seen them make a move so far. They did not address pitching in free agency, but there was the question of who actually owns the Baltimore Orioles, and there was a whole ownership thing in the offseason that got in the way as far as approving deals. But Baltimore has the best record in the American League so far with what they have at the starting pitching front, but we know once you get into the postseason how important starting pitching is. So in the next 80 minutes, this is what we're going to be paying attention to from a White Sox perspective, is if anything happens with Dylan Cease. And will the White Sox be moving Dylan Cease? And with that Dylan Cease being brought up, this would be a good time to bring up as far as some news. I appreciate this. Big Z-Man 34, Caitlin McGrath from The Athletic mentioned that the MRI showed no structural damage in Bo Bichette's right knee. Best case scenario, Bo is listed as day-to-day. So Big Z-Man, thank you for that update. This is what I'm going to need help with, guys, because right now I've got like keywords that I'm paying attention to. So that's great news for the Toronto Blue Jays. For the Blue Jays, like, part of their thinking was we could acquire a shortstop to help us in the short term while Bo Bichette is out. But then we would like someone that we can maybe move over to help out at third base when Matt Chapman needs a day off, or somebody that could help over at second base. And that was the whole idea with like Tim Anderson. The Blue Jays could acquire Anderson. He could help out at shortstop, and then he could move over to second base. And that would be quite an interesting up the middle combination for the Blue Jays with Bichette and Anderson up the middle. But thank you for that update. And also joining me now, and I haven't seen him in a bit, as soon as technology helps out, Jim Margulis, the managing editor of SoxMachine.com, is here with me now for a bit before the trade deadline. Jim, welcome to the 2023 MLB Trade Deadline watch. This time we're on video. The last couple of years, we've been on Twitter Spaces, and we know how well Twitter's working these days. But welcome, and I guess, what has been your reaction so far to what we've seen today with the trade deadline?
Nothing terribly surprising, I think, would be the way to go. Just maybe the thing I'm most surprised about, and I shouldn't be, it's just when you see the sums of numbers, is how much money the Mets are spending to move Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer. It's a ridiculous amount of money. And, you know, it's one of those luxuries that I think, you know, as disappointing as the Mets season has been, it's nice to know, like, if you're a Mets fan, like, oh, he can power his way through this. And all of a sudden the payroll looks not terribly cluttered, even if there's a lot of money that's currently like kind of invisible when you look at money being paid to players not there. But it's got to be a nice feeling to know that, like, no matter what, you can always dig deeper until Major League Baseball decides like, oh, we're going to close that loophole as well.
We did get this comment from Fred, and I mentioned Dylan Cease. That's what we're paying attention to right now from a White Sox perspective, if Cease gets moved before the deadline. And I'd like to get your thoughts about that topic in a moment here, Jim. But there is Yasmani Grandal, and there's been some whispers about the Dodgers possibly being interested in a reunion with Yasmani Grandal. Nothing has really transpired. And Fred's comment, is going to be DFA'd. We need to tally up how much money Han has wasted in guys they've just released. And if Grandal is not moved before the deadline, does it make any sense to continue playing him post-deadline? Is this like an opportunity where he kind of follows maybe the same path Elvis Andrus might be following here in a moment in being DFA'd so the White Sox could figure out what they've got in Seby Zavala and Carlos Perez?
I think it makes a little bit of sense to hold on to him like immediately. Like they don't have to cut him immediately after like 5:01 p.m. You say, sorry, yes, you're gone, just because they probably want to have some idea of what Corey Lee can do. He's just coming off the injured list with an oblique strain. I think they probably want to see, like, is he going to be part of our September plans? Is he going to be priority one for September? Is Seby on his way out the door because he has no options and because he really hasn't hit? Is Carlos Perez going to be just kind of phased out? I think they have a few guys they need to juggle, but until like they understand what Corey Lee is and whether he's looking like he should be worthy of a September call-up, I can see it just being a case of like professional courtesy, just waiting for like the right opportunity, kind of like with Andrus and the White Sox last year. Like Andrus was let go and just happened to be that Tim Anderson was hurt, and Andrus had an immediate opening for a team that was trying to contend. I can see a similar situation where like there's no aching need to get rid of him unless he's some kind of like horrendous clubhouse presence that nobody likes having around, which I don't think is the case. But, if a catcher gets hurt or, they just hear either through direct talks or the grapevine or whatever that like Arizona needs a catcher or they're looking to DFA, or somebody else just got placed on waivers, that was their second catcher, then maybe that's when they say like, good try, didn't work out. Move on. But in this case, like if the White Sox were contending still, like, I would put Grandal in a separate category from all the other money they've cut, like Larry Garcia. That's a different bucket, just because like if the White Sox were contending, Grandal would still be around. This is like professional courtesy DFA waivers, because he's earning his keep as a second catcher. And if you're counting on a 30-something catcher being good into the fourth and final year of his deal, you're probably not going to get there. Your hopes are probably unreasonable. It's just more a matter of like the inefficiency of free agent contracts, that like the fourth year is probably going to be ugly. The final year of most contracts are going to be ugly if they extend beyond 3 years, or Dallas Keuchel on the third year. But Grandal's, he's been fine for my expectations. And I imagine some team will say like, we could use a catcher who's fine, because a lot of catching situations are bad.
We did get this comment in as far as the live chat, and thank you to all those. I continue to see more and more people joining us. Welcome. I'm Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margulis from Sox Machine. We'll be here all the way through the trade deadline. Again, the trade deadline is at 5 p.m. Central Time. So continue posting your comments and questions in the live chat.
Did you see this from Craig Mish, Miami Marlins beat writer?
Did not.
The Miami Marlins are acquiring Jake Berger.
What?
And it is him. Like I said, with Twitter being what it is, like I have to double check to make sure these are names before I say anything.
Wow. And Craig is like the most reliable guy, by the way, folks. If you're looking to follow someone for every team, I highly recommend following Craig Mish when it comes to as far as the Miami Marlins. The White Sox will receive Marlins pitching prospect Jake Eder in the deal. Jake Eder just struck out 10. He had a very impressive start in his last appearance. He is someone that has had helium within the Marlins farm system. Again, the Marlins do such a great job developing pitchers. So let me get everything ready to go here in the banners. But here we go. That's the first big move really surprising. Obviously, Jake Burger having a tremendous season for the Chicago White Sox. Really bounce back type of year, Jim. I think he's still third in the American League in total home runs hit. And here he is, Burger, now heading to Miami. And Miami desperately needed a power bat, Jim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at Eater right now because I'd seen the name, but because of Pensacola box scores in the Southern League with the Birmingham Barons, like same thing with Kai Bush. Seen him in box scores. Yeah, it seems like it's a case where like he has another guy like Kai Bush, whose season was delayed. So his first game appearance of the year was in June. So like he's just getting up to speed, and yeah, last couple outings have been good. 3 of his last 4 have been good. Walks seem like they've been under control after an early blip of having like a lot of crooked numbers in the walk column. So I'm intrigued. 4th round pick in 2020 during that 5-round draft. So that's the basics on him, and I'll have to look more in terms of like what he's throwing. But yeah, just the initial reaction is one. Unfortunate for White Sox fans because Burger has been one of the bright spots and one seems like a swell fella, like somebody who is very easy to root for and a lot of energy and making the most of, he's on his 3rd life in baseball when it comes to rupturing Achilles and everything like that. And see him had the year he had, it's a shame that he's going. However, my reaction is that like the White Sox needed to get less right-handed, needed to get less bulky, needed to get less swing happy. And whether it's Andrew Vaughn, whether it's, Jake Burger, whether it's, Eloy Jimenez, like there are a bunch of guys who fit this bill in terms of like gravitating towards first base defensively, that there needed to be some kind of move. And, whether it was a move that was like a win in and of itself or a move that was just a win because they got somebody who might be interesting, but it's more about just unlocking this depth chart and just kind of easing the gridlock on the depth chart in the roster to finally allow like other guys to be able to move freely. So, it's unfortunate that just happens to be Jake Burger, but because the White Sox have so few guys who are like standing out for one reason or another positively, Burger it seems to be.
Yeah, so we got this comment from Matt, and I think Matt makes a good point. If they're going to work on clearing out the glut of DHs, as you just mentioned, Jim, it makes sense. Would rather keep Eloy anyways. And Matt, I agree with you, but I'm sorry, Eloy, you got to start hitting homers, man. It should be you 3rd in the American League in home runs. You and Luis. Well, maybe that was an idea, wasn't it? I mean, with the White Sox moving Jake Burger and getting Jake Eater, here's another interesting arm that could help out at some point in 2024, the White Sox starting rotation. I'm not
it's fun? We could call this the Burger Eater trade.
The Burger Eater trade. Absolutely. Again, be patient with Eater. I would not pencil him in the White Sox opening day starting rotation, but he is someone that could help out at some point in 2024. It's just, I don't know if this was going to be a Daniel Palka situation. That was like a question we've been getting a lot, Jim, in the last couple of weeks. Watching Jake Burger continue to hit home runs, and White Sox fans, naturally, just because we're White Sox fans, concerned of when is this ride going to end? Like, is he going to turn into Daniel Palka next year and suddenly forget how to hit? And when you look at the metrics, especially like the whiff rates against pitches for Jake Burger, they're scarier than the Daniel Palka's numbers were when Palka hit 27 homers for the White Sox. But whenever Jake Burger makes contact, and I know he's got a gigantic whiff rate, he smashes the baseball. And he has an incredibly high average exit velocity, which is, I think, a pretty important number, higher than 91 miles per hour, which is really impressive. He's got a very high hard hit rate as well. And again, Miami needed power bats, so this makes a lot of sense. And for the Marlins, they get Burger for a couple of years. This is just not a rental here for one season. They get a couple of seasons with Jake Burger. But if Jake Burger is going to be this guy that was going to hit 30-plus home runs for the White Sox and they just traded him, while they need pitching help, they still need guys that could hit 30-plus home runs. And for me, at least, this puts the magnifying glass in the back of Eloy and Andrew Vaughn. Like, you guys need to hit home runs. Like, I'm tired of talking about the potential that you have. We need to see it. And it was a surprise, but at least we saw it with Jake Berger, in which I was sold that, hey, does he have power in the major leagues? Yes, he's third in the American League in home runs. And the White Sox had to trade Jake Berger away to acquire more pitching depth. That's the sad thing about this, is that the White Sox can't hold on and to see if Jake Berger could continue to do this, because they sorely need pitching.
Yeah, Berger, he came into the minors, came from the draft as a guy with like too flat of a swing, hitting too many balls on the ground, and then like that got interrupted by the surgeries. But he is a success story when it comes to somebody tweaking a swing to get more lift. So I'm not sure whether that's something he'll take with him. And he's kind of like an aberration, although like, you know, he and Gavin Sheets seem to have a good rapport in terms of like, kind of working with the same tools, you know, helping each other get better. And maybe there will be something learned from the whole Jake Berger experience around those surgeries and the lengthy rehab periods he endured to get back to the majors. But that's kind of what I take away. Like the other one is like, was Luis Robert like stumping for a trade so like somebody gets off his tail for the home run lead because Berger was closing in? Because I thought like, oh, it's gonna be Luis Robert running away, and all of a sudden Berger like hits 25 and he's just like sneaking up on him. So yeah, right now like you can easily, if you had like Luis Robert leading the team in homers, like nobody is challenging him now. Next up is Vaughn and Jimenez tied with 13.
Yeah, the combined, I don't think they're going to catch Luis Robert this year. Luis Robert might be jealous. He bought that huge house in South Florida. If he were traded to Miami, he'd be a lot closer to his mansion that Luis Robert bought. Very nice house. But
maybe Jake Berger can rent it.
Yeah, Jake Berger can rent a room from Luis. But yeah, so a surprise. There we go, folks. We're 20-some minutes into this live stream, and we got the first breaking news for the Chicago White Sox. Jake Berger traded to Miami. That kind of sideswipe on what I was going to be asking Jim in regards to, again, what we're going to be paying attention to for the next hour here, as it's currently 3:52, and that is Dylan Cease. So now that Jake Berger's been dealt, that's 6 players the White Sox have moved. There's been some conversation about Dylan Cease. The starting pitching market is starting to thin out here, as Michael Lorenzen was traded from the Detroit Tigers to the Philadelphia Phillies. So there's a lot of attention right now that for teams that want starting pitching, you better pick up the phone and call the White Sox and the Tigers, because the Tigers still have Eduardo Rodriguez.
But did you see from Jeff Passan? The Dodgers and Tigers had a trade in place for left-handed starter Eduardo Rodriguez, but Rodriguez invoked his 10-team no-trade clause that included the Dodgers, and the deal is now dead.
What? What? Eduardo, what are we doing?
I don't know.
Eduardo, what are we doing, bud? That's crazy. Could the Dodgers... Do the Dodgers have enough to get Dylan Cease?
I don't like what the Dodgers have for Dylan Cease. Like, if it's Cartaya and Bush, like, we've talked about Bush, like, he just scares me for, like, is he not a real second baseman? Is he stuck to corners? You know, he's 25, hasn't quite had any major league success yet. Cartaya is like Keibert Ruiz scares me in terms of like Dodgers catchers, or any catcher really. I think it's a tough learning curve to get all the way up to the major leagues as a real good catcher. So like, yeah, I prefer the Orioles in what they have over the Dodgers. Like the Dodgers are fine, but not for the best that the White Sox have to offer.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well in the comments section. Which team would you be wanting the White Sox to make a deal with for Dylan Cease? And in this slide, again, I made this graphic before the Houston Astros acquired Justin Verlander. Maybe the Astros would still be interested. Baltimore, I think, makes a ton of sense, but I don't know if they have the appetite to make such a blockbuster move. They have not added any starting pitching so far before the trade deadline. And the Cincinnati Reds could be a possibility as well. They are looking for a frontline starter as they are going to have they're in first place right now. We'll go through the standings here in a moment. But the Reds could use a frontline starter as well. So for those that have just jumped in, welcome. I'm Josh Nelson, and alongside Jim Margulis. We are from Sox Machine. Greatly appreciate everybody watching the live stream right now. If you just joined us and you're trying to get the latest news regarding the White Sox latest trade, Jake Burger, according to Craig Mish, has been traded to the Miami Marlins in exchange for pitcher Jake Eder. So the White Sox continue to add starting pitching prospects into their farm system with the deals that they have made. So again, Burger, the latest White Sox player to be dealt, he is heading to Miami. And in the bottom ticker, we don't have the Jake Burger edition yet, but we'll continue to update the bottom ticker. So if you're joining us and wondering what have been the trades so far that have happened and what could be some of the trade targets for the White Sox, we're trying to do our best here, keeping tabs on what is transpiring. Now, in the bottom tab, as far as the ticker going through right now, so I mentioned the beginning part of the show, my thoughts about Tim Anderson possibly being moved. And there was a good point in the comment section during the live chat, Jim, that Jake Burger was in the lineup tonight for the White Sox. Now he's not in the lineup. And I thought Tim Anderson would not be dealt because he is in the lineup. So that could be a flaw in my thinking here. With about 64 minutes left to go before the trade deadline, do you think Tim Anderson could be dealt?
Doesn't seem likely to me. Like, it feels like, I don't know, if I would put a number on it, like 20%. There's a chance that some teams could use him, but like, if the White Sox want to try to put themselves in a position to where like they could contend in a weak division with some good breaks from young players, he's a part of that. And if he continues to play well through August and September, his trade value, I'm guessing, would be similar to what it is right now with like a stretch run plus a full season to follow. Like, teams aren't necessarily sold. He still has just one homer. He's still not really pulling the ball in the air. The opposite field power really isn't there. And like, he'd be going to a park that is probably less suited to opposite field power than, I think there are only a couple, like Cincinnati's one and maybe Yankee Stadium is another, that where right-handed hitters poking the ball to right field can get the ball out. Otherwise, like, it's, if you're looking for plus contributions from a shortstop, like, they might not believe that Anderson's there in his current form. So like, I don't see the pressure for the White Sox to trade him. I thought it was more a matter of like, if teams get really desperate because the market is thin, but the market will be pretty pathetic for the middle infield pools, second base, shortstop, either side of the bag. It'll be pretty dry in the offseason as well. So if he continues playing well through the rest of the season, like, they should be able to resume talks with teams that might have been interested this time around, and then see what their prospects look like at the end of the year when they have a couple months of the guys they've acquired, in their organization and approaching the majors and seeing exactly how far away they are.
So this question was posed to me on 670 The Score when I last joined Dan Bernstein and Lawrence Holmes. And Cornsey in the comment section is asking, can we send Mike Clevenger to the Los Angeles Dodgers? So with that deal falling through between the Dodgers and the Tigers for Eduardo Rodriguez, Clevenger did look good in his last start, Jim, for 5 innings. Teams looking for starting pitching help. Is Clevenger a possibility, or is that $4 million buyout / mutual option next year too big of a deterrent for teams to acquire Clevenger outside of the off the field stuff, obviously?
I think the biggest deterrent is probably just, it's hard to see him going longer than 5 innings. He's not missing a lot of bats. Like, if a team acquired him, would he make a postseason start? And probably not, just because like, he just isn't that dynamic. And so it takes a certain set of circumstances to like care about getting a guy like him. And like, the Dodgers already acquired that kind of guy in Lance Lynn. Like, that's the kind of bulk innings guy who helps cross the day off the calendar and saves the bullpen. Like, he's better at that than Clevenger this year, especially since Clevenger just missed a month plus with a bicep issue and has a richer history of missing time recently. So, he might be more of I'm guessing like a waiver claim type situation to where like, if it's late August and the White Sox are like, we got guys we want to try, or like, we want to save some money, maybe let him go and somebody can claim him and they take him that way. But I don't see him bringing a whole lot back unless it's just like a player to be named later. And it's really not that impressive.
So we have this comment, add Clevenger to Cease to help grease the wheels for an Orioles deal from Eel. I think taking Clevenger out, I don't know why the White Sox or whoever from the White Sox front office has been leaking to the media that the team does not have any interest or little interest in dealing Aaron Bummer. I could see Baltimore making that type of trade, Jim, in which they acquire Cease and Aaron Bummer to help out with their bullpen, as someone that I know Bummer at times just doesn't get lefties out. But at least the logic from other organizations is that give us this lefty, Aaron Bummer could help us in the postseason. We have a lot better infield defense than the Chicago White Sox do, so we could take advantage of these ground balls. So yeah, send over Bummer and Cease. Like, I could see that as a path for the Baltimore Orioles before the deadline.
Yeah, I think maybe, I'm wondering if the no interest in trading him is like the no interest in trading Cease, in which it's more like, don't send us bad offers. We see his ERA and FIP discrepancy too. We know that,
I hope they do. I hope the White Sox do.
But I think it's more a matter of like, don't lowball us. Obviously his, his performance isn't that great to where like they can't ask for the moon, but like they know what they'd be giving up, and they know that, with like a little bit better infield positioning, or whether it's just like making a tweak. So like his, sinker is like, has a little bit different movement profile. So it doesn't get like just the completely worthless contact that goes 40 miles per hour and 40 feet and ends up in singles. I think that's really the Bummer luck profile that we talk about, just the full swings and meager results that somehow just always flummox the White Sox defense. And maybe that's wherever he goes, that'll be the case, or just like some team will know how to tweak it and say like, this will get this will result in more useful topping or more useful end of the bat contact. Maybe there is some teams that can get that granular with the kind of profile that Bummer has to not make it to where like the contact is really just so bizarre that no team can really position themselves accordingly. He's almost like a knuckleballer in that regard, to where like just the ball comes off the bat in weird, inexplicable directions. And, just no matter how they position, the ball just escapes where the White Sox are set up.
And then finally, the other trade target, Alex Middleton, being ignored because everybody wants Cease. And yeah, with Keenan Middleton, I'm surprised he hasn't been dealt yet, Jim. I thought he would be the first one moved because he's cheap. He's only owed like a little bit more than $300,000 for the rest of the season, but this is something that you wrote on SoxMachine.com. His latest appearances are like a red flag. Like, he's really struggling. He's allowing runs. He's allowing home runs in his last few appearances. I'm wondering if other teams are not particularly interested in someone that can throw high 90s, but prefers to throw changeups over the fastball.
Yeah, his track record is, the way he's throwing, kind of like I've mentioned it before, like the Evan Marshall, 3 pitches, can throw them all at any given time. That's helped, I think, create some bit of a difference in the scouting reports on him, and gave him some deception that teams might not have seen when they saw him around the league previously. But, he did have Tommy John surgery, did like cost him some velocity. And so maybe, just the league is adjusting a little bit to him. Like, they know, like, oh, now that his changeup is here and he has confidence in throwing it, like, now we're learning how good the pitch is, versus just how much was confusion based off, he throws with confidence and we didn't know that was coming. That's kind of been my concern with Middleton, and watching him struggle like over the course of July and I think a little bit in June as well, to where like, he quietly slipped down the leverage ladder to where like he was getting save opportunities like in early June when Graveman wasn't available. Like now he's been more low leverage, first guy in if it's past the sixth inning, and I imagine some teams just might be a little bit unimpressed by it too. Like I still see that he could be moved, but maybe teams don't see him as somebody who can solve a problem and slot neatly into the seventh inning. If they're looking for that kind of guy, maybe they'd acquire him in terms of like, oh, he's got 3 pitches now. Let's see if we can get something better out of it. But also, like, he just might have been a flash in the pan. And, if we can get him cheap and send somebody who was, either took up a 40-man roster spot we didn't want or needs a 40-man roster spot next year, and we don't really want to make room for him, like, I still kind of see that kind of deal being possible because, Middleton's a free agent at the end of the year. And so it could be a minimal commitment.
We did get this question from Brian O'Connor. And again, thank you guys so much for the comments and questions. And thank you for everyone joining us. It's currently 4:06, 54 minutes before the trade deadline. I'm Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margulis. For those that just joined us, we are from Sox Machine. We'll be bringing you guys all the way up to the trade deadline. Remember, there are some deals that are announced after 5 p.m. Those are the deals that the agents and teams feed the reporters. They get done at like 4:58 p.m. Central Time. So that's why we are planning to be here until 5:30 to make sure we cover all of the deals. Brian O'Connor asked, I know they won't trade him, but do you think the White Sox should hold on to Gregory Santos or trade him? And this is an interesting conversation because he's young, Jim. He's 23 years old. Looks like he's going to be the White Sox closer for the rest of the season. I really like his stuff, but we know relievers could be fickle. He's great this year. There's no guarantee that he's going to be great next year. What do you think about the idea of maybe the White Sox moving Gregory Santos?
Feels a little bit like Tommy Kahnle in that the White Sox did trade him relatively high, like near the height of his value, but because they sent him with Todd Frazier and David Robertson, the money owed to them, to the Yankees, like they got Blake Rutherford in return, and they just they might have liked Blake Rutherford anyway. The thing, I see the argument for trading Santos. Like I said before, like it gets kind of back to like how much the White Sox want to try to put into next year's team, or whether they completely look towards 2025 to see like exactly like where they're going to, when they're going to push again for the top of the AL Central. The one thing keeping me from trading Santos is like he keeps them from having to buy a reliever. And I'm tired of seeing like the White Sox use their resources in free agency to acquire relievers. Like they acquired him cheaply. They got him for Cade McClure. McClure is not really doing anything of note with the Giants. He wasn't going to do much with the White Sox. Like Santos is better. And so I just would rather, if the White Sox are going to push again in the near future, like it's nice to see them get somebody who looks like a high leverage arm. And it's one reliever they don't have to acquire with money or with prospects, and they can actually devote that money to like starting pitching or another bat in the lineup that helps give more leads, because we saw the limitations of the White Sox strategy of just protecting every lead possible. That just doesn't work because bullpens eventually wear out if the same guys have to be used over and over and over again.
We did get this comment, and this is going to be a popular discussion point, especially after the deadline. And Jim and I will be recording a new podcast for you guys tomorrow night to recap all the activity that happened to the trade deadline. And it's a question from Brian Marshall. Josh, you said that you were at a tough spot hoping for Rick Hahn to nail these trades while also hoping he is let go. How is he doing on the first part, and what more does he need to do? Seems good so far. Brian, from my perspective, Rick Hahn is tasked to tear down his blueprint. Like, he was the architect of this rebuild and this contention window, and he is now tasked to demo the house that he built. The White Sox have to rebuild a new house. I'm still not confident he's the guy that should be building it. I think what we have noticed so far is that Rick Hahn does have a skill that might be valuable for other teams, Jim, and that is being the demolition GM. Mm-hmm. If you need to tear things down, if you need to trade expiring contracts or players with control and get someone interesting of note, Rick Hahn's your guy. Like, that's what he's good at. The problem that he has is that he's not great at adding or building around cores. So we'll talk more about this at the podcast. But Brian, since you brought it up, at 5:05 p.m. Central Time, the White Sox could fire Rick Hahn. Like, his work is done. He's not needed anymore. I know that sounds really cruel, but in like corporate terms, like, yeah, you are here to clean up this mess. And as soon as the deadline passes, thank you for your time with the White Sox. We need to find someone else to help rebuild this team and move forward. Right now, he's just tasked with tearing down the house that he built.
Yeah. Maybe give him a bonus on the way out, just because like he could have sat on his hands. Like he could have just mailed it in the last, 2 weeks and like, Alavila last year.
Yeah.
Like that was the problem with the Tigers. Like not only did they, their rebuild stall, but also they did nothing at the deadline aside from like shipping out expiring contracts for very little. And that's why Avila got fired, or when they timed it like they did. So like, yeah, like it doesn't inspire confidence that Hahn's still like making moves in a way, because like that means he's still like invested in next year's team, and I'd rather him not be. But yeah, I think we can probably separate it. When he made the trades last time around with Sale and Quintana and Eaton, like those were good trades, and they were well received by everybody. Like he was the toast of the winter meetings when he traded Giolito and Eaton on back-to-back days. And then he was praised for holding on to Quintana until the deadline. And that was fine. Like, people who had no reason to pump up Rick Hahn trades are saying like, yeah, this looks like he did a pretty good job. That looks like he maximized their value. And he's working with far less this year. And I think that's what concerns me about him hanging around, is like he squandered away like a good start to a rebuild last time. This is like an okay start in terms of talent. They're getting guys who are like top 100-ish, or like have some upside if they're not in the top 100, like Nastrini, like somebody who has some flaws but also has some characteristics that could be like he could have some helium in a little bit, to where like, yeah, he fits in. Like he's doing a good job with okay players, but it's resulting in like okay talent coming back. It is commensurate with what he's giving up. And if he squandered like the kind of head start he got in like building an affordable core last time around, there's no reason to think he can like do better this time around. So yeah, I agree that like this shouldn't change anybody's mind, but maybe like, one of the problems with the White Sox is that they hold on to guys for so long that there's never any time for nostalgia. Like the Tigers fans with Dave Dombrowski, like, man, I wish we had Dave. They got tired of him, when the core was aging and expensive and they couldn't do anything to it. But like now that time has passed, they can say like, oh, I really miss having him around or making that kind of move. Like we can't have any opportunity to miss what Rick Hahn was able to do with extensions or rebuild trades. And we haven't been able to miss what Kenny Williams did in the aughts, like building
a World Series team. Yeah.
Building World Series team, and then like scrambling a little bit to build interesting teams that maybe didn't have enough to get all the way. Like he had some skills that were decent. We can't miss that because they're still around and they're contributing to a very bad product right now. So like if the White Sox were to fire Hahn and Williams in like August or September, or by the start of the offseason, like we could finally start saying like, hey, credit Rick Hahn for giving the White Sox this, or credit Kenny Williams for doing this. But until they're gone, like it's hard to flatter them because it feels like you're justifying continued employment, which has not been the case.
Yeah, whoever takes over or moving forward, it's one thing to acquire these guys, it's another to develop them, and that is also the GM's job as well, is to build a development staff. And the White Sox sorely need help in that area. So while they are acquiring interesting guys, they need to develop them. And that's been a major problem for the White Sox as well. And I think that will be a big focal point, at least for me, if the White Sox do move on from Rick Hahn. One, who replaces Rick Hahn? And what is their game plan as far as the near future and trying to build around Luis Robert? But also long-term, what are you going to do differently when it comes to developing players down to the minor leagues? Because just too often right now, like Oscar Colas just seems like a fish out of water. He's great on defense. Like I know that he's got a major league skill. He could play defensively at right field. he's having a terrible time hitting right now. And it just seems like whoever the White Sox call up from Charlotte, hey, this guy's hitting like 14 home runs in Charlotte. And they join the White Sox and they're slugging like 250. Like they can't hit in the major leagues. Where's the disconnect? And that's part of the other equation as well, as whoever takes over for the White Sox moving forward at GM, if there's a change at GM after this season. That's going to be a big focal point of the White Sox efforts in trying to improve the development part. So yes, Rick Hahn is doing a good job of unloading expiring contracts. He's exchanging redundancy with Jake Berger in exchange for more starting pitching depth that the White Sox need. But that's also Rick Hahn's fault because he didn't build up starting pitching depth and his development team's not building up starting pitching depth. It's like, hey, they're addressing these needs. They're needs because they failed to address them. It's their own problem. And I don't know if they have even solved that problem still. So at this moment...
Here's a note from James Fegan, our friend James, saying, hearing White Sox getting Luis Patino from the Rays for cash, but otherwise I'm taking this deadline off. So Luis Patino... former top prospect.
Yes.
He was traded from the Padres to the Rays, and was that the Cronenworth deal?
I believe so, yes.
No, that's the Blake Snell deal. So that was
they have made multiple deals with each other.
Yes. Yep. And he just hasn't quite put it together. Like this would be a case where like, I'm looking what he's doing in the minors this year. He's had a couple cracks or like a few trials in the majors, hasn't quite gotten it. The control's gone the wrong direction. Durham this year shifted him to the bullpen, 38 strikeouts against 29 walks, 10 homers, over 45 innings. So like none of the numbers you like are there. The three true outcomes are all working against him. But he is only 23 years old. The White Sox do have a ton of innings, whether it's in Charlotte or Chicago, to a lot to pitchers over the next 2 months. So if it's only costing them cash, like why not? Like they just need fodder basically to get through the 9 innings a day or 8 innings a day for the next 50 something games.
And they should be familiar with Patino, with obviously him playing at Durham. The White Sox, how many affiliates do the White Sox share with the Rays as far as in leagues? 3?
Definitely Bowling Green and Charlotte, Winston-Salem and Bowling Green are in the same affiliate.
I know they don't share in the Southern League. I don't think Tampa Bay's got a Southern League affiliate.
I'm trying to think who their A-ball affiliate is.
I thought it was 3. But anyways, the White Sox should know well Tampa's AAA. If they don't, again, that is another area. Like I know some people are like, never trade with Tampa Bay. The White Sox should be one of the teams should be confident in trading with Tampa Bay. Because their affiliates are in multiple leagues. Oh, they're on all 4.
Yeah, Tampa, Durham, Montgomery, Charleston, and Bowling Green.
That's right. They have Montgomery. So the White Sox should be confident if their front office was worth the damn. They should be tracking how Tampa Bay's prospects are doing because your prospects face their prospects all the time. So the White Sox should be comfortable trading with Tampa. They should know what they've been getting back from Tampa. But alas, again, that's a whole mess in the front office, and that takes up like an entire podcast. It's currently 4:18 right now Central Time, so we're about 42 minutes away from the trade deadline. For those that have hopped in, I'm Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margulis, a Sox Machine.
I'm going to drop off real quick just to get a quick Jake Berger post up on the site. I will be right back.
Excellent. So I'll fly solo here while Jim does that. So you can keep me up on one screen while Jim does some work there. And I'll take up as far as the big screen here. Again, welcome everybody. I'm Josh Nelson from Sox Machine. And we got about 40 minutes left to go here as far as the trade deadline. Again, the comment section, you guys have been awesome in the live chat. Continue to post questions. Continue to post comments. If you guys see breaking news that I am not seeing, again, I'm just one person, definitely put in the live chat. Hit me up on Twitter as well. I'm at SoxMachine_Josh. I'll be able to find it as well, as I'm constantly trying to stay up to date here on what is happening right now on the national scale. It seems everyone's trying to figure out why Eduardo Rodriguez invoked his no trade clause and squashed the deal between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Detroit Tigers. So that seems to be one of the big stories right now on the national level, as we're still trying to figure out on how the rest of this trade deadline is going to shake out, especially for the Chicago White Sox, as you can see in the bottom ticker right now. The deals that have been made. And if you joined us just now, we talked about it earlier, but the big breaking news from a White Sox perspective, Jake Burger traded to the Miami Marlins for pitcher Jake Eder. As the White Sox continue to build up pitching depth in their farm system, it is sorely needed. And Jake Burger, obviously a power bat, third in the American League in home runs, joining the Miami Marlins, a team desperate for more power. And it'll be interesting to see on how the Marlins use Jake Burger. They could pretty much put Jake Burger just as the DH. And it's going to be kind of fun to see Jake Burger in a Marlins uniform. And with that said, I think it's a good time to kind of go around as far as the standings here. And we'll start in the American League East, because I think this is going to be part of the conversation in the last 40 minutes here, the trade deadline, on what could happen. So again, these are the standings before tonight's games as action picks up again. The Baltimore Orioles have the best record in the American League. They're 65-41. They're 1.5 games ahead of Tampa Bay in the East. Every team in the East is above 500, but there's just some doubt right now as far as what's going on in New York. The Yankees have been very quiet. They may not make any moves. The Red Sox have made minor moves, but they haven't made any major moves as well. So are the Red Sox, Yankees just punting the rest of this season? They're so close to the wild card, though. Even though the Yankees are in last place in the American League East and Boston's in fourth place, Yankees and Red Sox are within 4 games of the wild card. And you got Toronto right now at 59-48. They're 6.5 games back in the division, but they would be in the postseason thanks to the wild card. So still pretty tight races and interesting conversations going on in the American League East. It'd be really interesting if the Yankees just waved the white flag, even though they're still within shouting distance of the American League wildcard. Moving over to the American League West, this is where I think things get spicy. The Texas Rangers have hit a cold spell. They have lost 7 of their last 10 games. They're 60-46. They still have half a game lead over the Houston Astros. But the Astros have Jose Altuve back. They have Yordan Alvarez back. So the Astros are finally getting healthy. And now they have added Justin Verlander to their starting rotation after Texas has added Max Scherzer. We may see Max Scherzer later this week, White Sox fans, as he is supposed to be the probable starter in this third game of this upcoming series that starts tonight. The Los Angeles Angels, man, they have made so many moves. They have added so many bats. CJ Cron, Randall Grichuk in recent days. That's on top of the Mike Moustakas, Eduardo Escobar deals that they made a couple months ago. And of course, acquiring Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez. The Angels are 4.5 games back in the division. They're 3 games back of the wild card, but they are getting some good news. Mike Trout appears to be coming off the injured list very soon. Might be tonight that he rejoins the Angels. So that would be a big boost for the Angels. And here's Seattle. Now, Seattle, it sounds like, is trying to unload Teoscar Hernandez before the deadline as he's got an expiring contract. And Seattle has already moved their closer to Arizona, but here they are, 55-51. They're 5 games back, 3.5 games back of the wild card. They're not out of it yet. And just like the Angels, the Mariners have suddenly gotten hot. They have won 7 of their last 10 games. So things in the American League, I wouldn't say they're getting wild. They're getting weird. So looking at the American League wildcard standings, right now Tampa Bay would be the 4th seed as the Minnesota Twins leading the Central would be the 3rd seed. The less we talk about the American League Central, the better. Again, Tampa Bay 5 games ahead as far as the last wildcard spots. They should be pretty comfortable in the playoff picture. But as a 4th seed, they'd face the 5th seed Houston Astros in the first round. What a matchup that would be in a 3-game series. And then the Toronto Blue Jays would luck out as the 6th seed. They'd be visiting Minneapolis in the first round of the playoffs. That might be the ideal spot that you want to be in. But look at Boston, the Los Angeles Angels, the Yankees, the Mariners. They're still within shouting distance of the wild card. So this should be a pretty interesting race from here on out. But what is the appetite? We know the Angels have been very hungry before the deadline. Will Boston make a move? Will the Yankees make a move? Will Seattle continue to be really unique and continue to make trades to add, or are they going to be unloading? That's where I'm be looking at as far as the American League on how those 4 teams improve. And of course, at the very top, is Texas done? Are the Baltimore Orioles going to do something? So those are the questions in the American League. Moving over to the National League, and boy, looking at the National League East, Atlanta's running away with it. Philadelphia has added Michael Lorenzen to their rotation. Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler not having the best of seasons this year. They did sign Taijuan Walker, so it sounds like the Phillies for the next couple of weeks are going to go with a 6-man rotation before they decide to push someone from their 5-man rotation into the bullpen. But then here's the Marlins. Again, they just added Jake Berger. They're a half game back of the Phillies in the National League East standings. At the National League Central, Cincinnati, red hot again. As long as the Reds don't face the Milwaukee Brewers, the Reds have been winning at a pretty consistent basis. When they face the Brewers, that's when things get unraveled for the Reds. It's been really odd for them, but they are currently 10 games above 500 at 59-49. They've won 7 of their last 10 games. They are back in first place in the National League Central. Milwaukee has cooled off. They've lost their last 4 games. They're 1.5 games back. We haven't seen Milwaukee be very active in this trade deadline. The Chicago Cubs at 500. They added Jaime Candelario, the third baseman, who was originally part of their farm system. So that's another bat the Cubs have added. They're not moving Marcus Stroman. They're not moving Cody Bellinger. So that big week that they had against the White Sox and the Cardinals, winning 8 of their last 10 games, has thrusted them back into the playoff picture. 5 games back of the Reds, who they play tonight. They're 3.5 games back in the wild card. So the Cubs are still alive. And in the National League West, the Dodgers looking to add pitching. It appears right now that that's where people are kind of focusing their attention on the national level because of the Dodgers trying to acquire Eduardo Rodriguez to help bolster the rotation. That got nixed. Where will the Dodgers pivot? You got the Giants, 58-49, still there. The Giants, 2.5 games back of the Dodgers. They're currently in the playoff picture. Arizona. Will Arizona make a big move before the deadline? Some think it might make sense for them to go after someone like Dylan Cease because they have a young core. The Diamondbacks are 57-50. They're at third place, 3.5 games back of the division, but they're part of the wild card race, which we'll talk about in a moment. And here's San Diego. I can't make heads or tails of what the Padres are doing, but they decided to add, I don't know if it's a big ad, but they added G-Man Choi and Rich Hill from the Pittsburgh Pirates to help add depth at first base, another left-handed bat, and another left-handed starter to be part of their rotation. The Padres are not quitting, but they are 3 games below 500. They're 8.5 games back to the Dodgers in the West, and they're still 5 games back of the wild card. So the Padres have some work to do. Looking at the National League wild card, and this is wild. Arizona, Miami, Milwaukee all have the same record. So if the season were to end today, San Francisco would be your 4th seed. They'd face 5th seed Philadelphia, who's only a half game ahead of Arizona, Miami, Milwaukee. And the Giants are only a game ahead of Arizona, Miami, Milwaukee. So you got Arizona, Miami, Milwaukee tied for the final spot in the National League playoffs. And you got 5 teams within a game of each other between the 4th seed and out of the postseason. Again, there is no game 163 in Major League Baseball. It will be based on standings tiebreakers. So this is where I'm looking to the National League before the deadline here, as it's currently 4:28. We're about 30 minutes away. Will any of these teams make a big move? Because you still have the Cubs there hovering around 3.5 games back. The Padres have made some minor moves, and we know the Padres have a loaded roster, and they're much better talent-wise than what their record shows, but they haven't put it all together. So the National League wild card, as far as getting these, the seeds 4 through 6, I think it's going to be a wild ride for the rest of the season. So that's what I'll be paying attention to here as far as the deadline. Again, welcome everybody. I'm Josh Nelson from Sox Machine. Thank you so much for joining us here on the live stream. Continue to roll in as far as the comments and questions that you may have here. Drake Foss, Patino from Tampa Bay, is he good? Drake, he once was. He's been really struggling as far as with his entire arsenal. really struggling at AAA this year with Durham, but it gives the White Sox another interesting option. We don't know the details of how much cash the White Sox are sending to Tampa Bay, but they should be familiar with Luis Patino. At one point, Patino was one of the top 100 prospects in all of baseball. This would be somewhat of a reclamation project for the Chicago White Sox and trying to get him back on track. But while he's been pitching mostly out of the bullpen for Tampa, it might be worthwhile to have Patino make some starts with the Charlotte Knights just to see if he can go 5 innings, because that's another option the White Sox have for next year. We got a hug watch thanks to Matty Rice, Colton Wong hugging teammates. Interesting. He's not been having a very good season at all. But Colton Wong, we got hug watch, so thank you for bringing that up. We got Jay Imberger's a 10. Thank you so much for this. Austin Hedges to Texas. So the Rangers continuing to add to their team. Really appreciate as far as this update. Again, if you guys see action happen and I'm not seeing it, definitely put in the comment section. Old friend alert. Josh Harrison DFA'd by the Phillies. No, the White Sox will not be cited Josh Harrison. They got plenty of Josh Harrison types. And again, for the White Sox, since we have started the live stream at 3:30, the move that they have made so far during the live stream is sending Jake Burger to Miami. So that's the move that they have made so far. We are expecting the White Sox to maybe make another move here. It's currently 4:31. We're 30 minutes away from the MLB trade deadline. And I know White Sox fans, for the most part, like looking in the comments section, it's always tough when you have players that you could root for get dealt. And it's tough for me to try to logically tell you guys why this deal makes sense for the White Sox. But from this comment from Michael, I'm sorry to see Jake get traded. He played with passion and one of those few guys in the current roster I enjoyed watching play. Michael, I'm with you, man. Like, logically, I could tell you why the White Sox traded Jake Burger to add someone like Jake Eater to their farm system to help address starting pitching depth. But Jake Burger hadn't quit after the All-Star break. And I'm not saying a lot of White Sox players have quit, but I think a lot of the players that had expiring deals wanted to get out, and they got out, and now they're in Los Angeles. Except like Lucas Giolito. I do buy that Lucas Giolito really never wanted to leave the White Sox, but now he's in the Angels, and now he gets to play with the best players in the league, and Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. But when you have this type of season where things are going to unravel, and the White Sox are going to be competing with Colorado to join Kansas City and Oakland to be the bottom 3, to have the 3 best odds of landing the number 1 pick in the MLB draft lottery that gets drawn during the winter meetings. You need someone to capture your attention for the rest of the season. And the way that Jake Burger's been hitting home runs, and what a great story this is, tearing his Achilles twice. He was a first-round pick, but it just seemed like with the injuries that he even admitted to himself that he thought about quitting the sport. He stuck with it and found his way back to the majors. And look at this amazing season that he's having. And yeah, the on-base percentage is not there, and there's a lot of red flags as far as with whiff rate and such. And we talked about that earlier in the show. But man, when he makes contact, it just rockets off the bat. And for the Miami Marlins, they are so desperate for power right now that they could really use Jake Burger. And I think for the exciting part for Burger, while it is sad to see him not be part of the White Sox, and I know that he mentioned many times that he cherishes White Sox fans, he's appreciative of White Sox fans that stuck with him during his ordeals and overcoming those injuries and getting to the majors. Again, Jake Burger is now joining a Miami Marlins team that's right there in the thick of things as far as at a playoff race. So if he continues to stay hot and he continues to hit homers for the Miami Marlins, maybe he could help the Marlins get into the playoffs, and we'll watch Jake Burger get some postseason at bats. I just hope that it was with the White Sox, but unfortunately that's not the case right now. And that's just not the situation that the Chicago White Sox are currently in. Let's see here. So we got Daniel here. let's see if this gets confirmed, but Tommy Pham just hugged Mets players and left in street clothes. We know that Tommy Pham was one of the players that was talked about that could possibly be moved. So we'll see on what that ends up happening. Again, the earlier Austin Hedges to Texas. Jeff Passan reporting the Texas Rangers are acquiring catcher Austin Hedges from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And that's the current big deal right now, which is not that big of a deal. I mean, Jonah Heim's a great catcher for the Rangers. That guy can mash, and we'll get to see him in this series. And then, Kurt, again, a lot of comments here. It does have to be mentioned that if you love Jake Burger, you do have to feel good for him breaking free of this mess. And it's kind of the same thing with Lucas Giolito. So many White Sox fans were heartbroken that Giolito got traded away, and I understand it. But now Giolito's got a chance to help the Angels get into the playoffs. He won't have a qualifying offer attached to him. So at free agency, I think that's really going to help out as far as Lucas Giolito and contract negotiations. So it sucks from that perspective of like being White Sox fans and being like, oh, I'm happy for these players. They get to leave. They get to go to a better place. It's like, why can't our favorite team be the better place? Why can't the White Sox be that place? Oh, man. Yeah, and again, as in Rec, he's at a better place than often this summer. It's so true. That is so true. And we got this comment from Catulo. This team's going to look very different. You're absolutely right. And we'll see, again, it's 4:35 right now, 25 minutes before the MLB trade deadline. For those that have just joined, I'm Josh Nelson from Sox Machine. Jim Margulis will join me in a moment here. He's posting breaking news on SoxMachine.com regarding the Jake Burger trade. So you could always click on another tab and read as far as his work while he's currently doing that. And yeah, so the rest of the season, if Dylan Cease doesn't get traded, so that's one starter. The White Sox are going to stick with Michael Kopech as a starter until they absolutely cannot. So he'll be the second starter. Mike Clevenger, as long as he's still in the White Sox, I haven't seen anything yet that's popped up as far as on my feed. If he has been dealt, and Jim just put up that Jake Burger post now. So you got Cease, you got Kopech, you got Clevenger. Tuki Tuasan's been a pleasant surprise for the White Sox. So that's your fourth starter. Jesse Schultens is going to start tonight for the White Sox. So that's your starting rotation. So it started with Dylan Cease, Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, Mike Clevenger, Michael Kopech on opening day. And now it's Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech, Mike Clevenger, Tuki Tuasan, and Jesse Schultens. Like, that's the White Sox rotation. With Jake Burger being dealt, I don't know what they do at second base. I'm sure... I don't know how you guys feel about Zach Remillard, but I'm sure we're going to see a lot of Zach Remillard because that's what Pedro Grifol likes right now. And it's been a pleasant surprise, and maybe Zach Remillard could be a super utility guy, but he is 29 years old. I think you need to figure out what you got in Lenin Sosa and Jose Rodriguez. I really do. And it does raise the point that Colson Montgomery's been performing so well, and now he's in Double-A. But what if Montgomery did not have that back injury? And what if he started the year in Birmingham on schedule and he raked there? Like, it is a thought that I have, maybe in another multiverse, that maybe we would see Colson Montgomery up with the White Sox just to see what they currently have. But yeah, if it's a choice between Remillard and Lenin Sosa or Jose Rodriguez, I think the White Sox need to figure out what they got with Sosa and Rodriguez. Because you got Montgomery coming up. You just drafted Jacob Gonzalez. It's kind of time for those two guys to show, do you have staying power in the major leagues? Because if you don't, the guys behind you might. And I always reference the scene in the Batman movie where the Joker, Heath Ledger, breaks the pool cue, throws it between the guys to decide who's going to be part of his crew, and they got to fight it out. That's kind of how I would like to see second base the rest of the season for the White Sox, to make these guys compete against each other. It's just going to be hard to give longish playing time, enough at bats for these guys, depending on who they like. But at the moment, I could see a lot of Zach Remillard at second base. Just got finished as far as posting the article about the Jake Burger breaking news. Jim Margulis rejoins me here on the live stream. Good timing. We're 20 minutes away. The latest trade, Jim, was just Austin Hedges being traded to Texas. And one of our Patreon supporters, longtime Patreon supporters, Jimbo, just posted a comment. Andrews and Grandal better be DFA'd if they can't be traded for tickets to the next Sabre conference.
Or the Sabre seminar, which is actually in a couple weeks in August at IIT. So I will be there if anybody is going. Feel free to say hi.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'll be in Alaska. I'll be on a vacation. But it does raise the question, and I just talked about like at second base and how this team looks different now with Jake Burger being gone, that I would like to see Lenin Sosa and Jose Rodriguez, Jim, get some playing time there. I know you mentioned with Grandal that maybe he sticks around longer, doesn't get immediately DFA'd. Does Andrews get DFA'd shortly after the deadline here? Like I even though I got a steak dinner bet on Elvis Andrews, I'm with everybody else. I'm kind of scratching my head on what his purpose is right now.
Yeah, I think so. Like it would make sense to, he's made a lot of rookie looking mistakes at second base. He's made if Anderson's hanging around, like they don't need him to play shortstop. They have guys who can fill in at shortstop if need be. So yeah, I don't see much of a purpose in having him around.
All right. So okay, I'm going through the gossip, the grapevine right now to try to get anything interesting. There's a lot of people from Baltimore thinking that Jackson Holliday is the ask from the Chicago White Sox in exchange for a deal with Dylan Cease. I can't see that happening. I don't see that happening. I don't see Baltimore moving off from Jackson Holliday. I thought Dan Zaborski had a pretty good trade idea, and I'll have to look through that again to see what he had. I think he had Westberg instead of Jackson Holliday as far as part of that trade, as far as his trade idea. But here we are, 18 minutes left to go, and I'm not saying things are quiet. I'm sure they are not quiet, but as far as the reporting front right now, things have been quieting down. And, TJ March here, as far as the comment section, Joel Sherman reporting, it seems like Jack Flaherty will be moved. That's one of the other pitchers that we've been expecting. The Eduardo Rodriguez, I don't think anyone's found out yet. We may not find out until like a couple days later why Erod decided not to take that deal to Los Angeles, which is really interesting. But Jim, we've done this for the last few years, and a couple years ago, this is right around the time when the White Sox broke the big news when they were adding, it seems forever ago, when they added Craig Kimbrell in what seemed to be like a last minute trade before the deadline. What are you paying attention to here in the last 17 minutes before the deadline?
Well, I think, Berger was in the lineup. So I don't think stated lineups make much of a difference in terms of, they can always be changed. Players can always be scratched. So I wouldn't necessarily take any lineups, whether it's in AAA or the majors, as any kind of gospel in terms of whether, a team is going to be keeping or moving a player. So I'm kind of watching that, but not really. I guess like if a player is kept out, like I'd assume that's because he's going to be moved or, at some point. But if a player's in the lineup, I don't think you can say that he's staying put. I wonder with like Dylan Cease, I'm getting complaints about my mic volume. I'm not sure if you're hearing the same thing.
It might be. It could be a StreamYard thing.
Okay. Because I'm not blowing out the levels on my end. So
it is a little loud now.
Okay. All right. Trying to adjust it. Okay. So when it comes to like Dylan Cease, like I wonder if, Jackson Holliday is like the ask. I wonder if it's like a game of chicken to where like the White Sox are Holliday and the Orioles are Westberg, and they go back and forth in like 459 hits. And one of them finally says like, fine, like that'd be kind of fun and theatrical. And, reminds me a little bit of, what I've seen of draft day on an airplane, just having that clock ticking. What's he going to do? And who's going to be who's going to have the steelier resolve to get the player they want for the price they want. Like, that's kind of how I'm hoping it is, because like, it does seem that if the deadline passes and like Jake Berger's last one moved, it will be a little bit disappointing.
Why do you think it would be disappointing? Because they have moved 6 players.
Yeah, I mean, like, not, or just disappointing today. Like, on the whole, it's fine, but like, it does seem like everything's shaping up to be a real good return for Dylan Cease. And I've written about it a little bit here and there, and like, I don't want to be, there's a risk of when, like, if the White Sox traded Dylan Cease, that a White Sox fan's reaction would be, well, he wasn't that good anyway, or he's losing it, or it's not gonna, they were gonna win with him. The thing that concerns me with Cease is like the 98 mile per hour fastballs aren't there this year, and hasn't thrown deeper into a game than 6 1/3 innings. Mm-hmm. So like, I think he's good in and of himself. He's just not good enough to like share the workload or take the workload for a rotation spot the way like Chris Sale and Jose Quintana could when they were at their peak, throwing 200 plus innings a year. So if he's like throwing like 170, 180 and he's walking a lot of guys, not going deep into games, like his effect isn't as great as pitchers we've seen typically referred to as aces. And so like, if the White Sox have other, rotation spots to fill, and if they're going to try to contend, like, and Cease is leading the way and they just don't have a whole lot behind him, like, I don't think his impact is going to be as felt as Cease would be in Baltimore for a team with a really good offense and really good defense and a bullpen that can generate relievers. Like, he would have a lot greater of an impact there than he would on a White Sox team trying to make it up as they go along, hoping that things click into place by 2024.
The question I have for Baltimore: are you really going to trot out Kyle Gibson in Game 1 of the playoffs?
Yeah,
is that what you're going to do?
They've been rewarded so far for their patience.
Sure,
like,
that's in the regular season.
Yeah. So I mean, like, that's a case where like I can see them, risking that and going into the postseason and maybe getting burned or maybe not getting burned. Maybe they like have a respectable postseason where they win a series and they lose, like just pitching's fine and the offense just doesn't deliver. Like, I could see it being like that they'd want to try it because they have very carefully laid plans, and maybe they still don't have the deepest of pockets because of the way the Angelos family is kind of running things. So that's kind of my thought on them, but this would be a time, especially since Cease is, they don't have to compete with the Yankees or the Dodgers for Cease's services in terms of like pockets. Like, this would be the kind of pitcher to acquire, especially when they have more prospects than spots.
Yeah, for Baltimore's sake, I hope they add someone in the next 13 minutes, because I do think they have a good chance of winning the American League pennant. I think their offense could go toe-to-toe with what Texas has got, what Houston has got. Obviously, the Royals have been playing well against their American League East counterparts. I'm just worried that if they come across the Astros, they just don't have the starting pitching to be able to win that type of series. They could use Cease, and the White Sox fans are like, well, Cease hasn't been all that great this year. Pop in the film of Cease against the Houston Astros this year, and that would convince me from a Baltimore perspective of, yeah, this is the guy we need. Game 1, this is the guy we need so we can get ahead of the Astros in that playoff series, because Cease has done very well against the Houston Astros this season in his 2 starts, especially back at opening day. I did find what Dan Zaborski wrote in Fangraphs 4 days ago on his idea of a possible Orioles-White Sox trade for Dylan Cease. He thought Jordan Westburg, Judd Fabian, another shortstop, Joey Ortiz, and pitcher Justin Armbruster. So 4 guys in exchange for Cease. Obviously, the big get would be Jordan Westburg. I know the White Sox were following Judd Fabian back when he was at Florida during his college days. He's a very White Sox prospect. A lot of swing and miss, but he's got some pop in the bat.
I'm going to say because he's the son of Dan Fabian.
I don't think so. He could be related, though. But Westburg would definitely help out in the middle infield situation for the White Sox, like right now. Forget Lenny Sosa and Jose Rodriguez. That's nice. You guys can stay down there. Westburg would be your second baseman. And And again, thank you guys so much for helping out because, again, I only have so many devices and so many eyes. TJ March, Joel Sherman. There are still executives who believe that the White Sox could trade Dylan Cease. Many times have collateral to get him, but perhaps the Orioles are best positioned. I think that last part is speculative as far as that part of the tweet. But thank you guys so much here. So we have some trade breaking news. Sox and Cheese and Jay Berg, thank you guys so much. Tommy Pham to the Arizona Diamondbacks. So while you're away, Jim, I brought up the National League wildcard standings, and this is wild, as I'll take down as far as the banner here. So you could just see Arizona, Miami, Milwaukee are all tied for the 6th seed right now if the season were to end today. And this is where in the last 10 minutes, I'm kind of like paying attention to who else makes moves here, Jim, in the National League, because it's going to be a tight race. So Miami, they add Jake Berger. Arizona adds Tommy Pham. We haven't seen Milwaukee make a big move here. They added to their bullpen. It looks like they made a deal with Arizona for Andrew Chafin. The Cubs have already added Candelario to the third base for them, another bat in their lineup. And we saw Lorenzen go to Philadelphia. So this is an area that I'm seeing right now as maybe an area of focus of teams that could be buying at the last minute here.
Yeah, I'm looking at Orioles. Did they acquire a pitcher?
Did they?
Yep. Passan says finalizing a deal for Jack Flaherty.
Okay. I mean,
although Mark Feinsand at the same time saying growing buzz that the White Sox may trade Dylan Cease in the next 10 minutes per sources. Dodgers and Orioles seen as favorites if he's moved.
See, the Dodgers make a lot of sense because Cease is kind of... Do you think he's similar to Walker Buehler? Like, I feel like their arsenals are very similar. And obviously Buehler is recovering from Tommy John. And there's uncertainty if this is going to be the last season for Clayton Kershaw. Like, he doesn't know. The Dodgers don't know if Kershaw's coming back. So if the Dodgers were to add Cease, that helps internally that type of leverage while Kershaw makes that decision that they're still okay.
But Buehler was always better at throwing strikes, right?
Yeah, he is.
So, I mean, who knows? The Dodgers, like, he's one... Like, that's why I don't want to say, like, he's on the downside of his career anyway, or, like, he won't reach his Cy Young peak again because, like, the Dodgers could get their hands on him and say, like, oh, just try this one weird trick to stop throwing the ball into the left-handed batter's box when your mechanics are out of whack. And all of a sudden he's back to, like, you know, riding that fastball 98 and above at the top of the zone and throwing the big heartbreaking slider. So that's, you know, the Dodgers make me nervous there when it comes to like what kind of Cease they'll acquire. And like I said, like I'm a little bit apprehensive about the prospects they do have at the top of their list because it seems like the ones that they might be happy to move.
That's key, right? That last part, that they would be happy to move.
Or a guy like Dylan Cease, yeah, who can save them money, you know, as they try to line up resources. Like he would help fill out the rotation while still, you know, having their financial ducks in a row for like Shohei Ohtani.
Well, I mean, that's what's been key for the Dodgers and why they haven't been taking on big salary. I mean, there was rumor that they were going after Justin Verlander, which I think would have put them over the luxury tax, but I think they're still under the luxury tax last I checked. So that really helps them in their pursuit of giving $500 million to Shohei Ohtani this upcoming offseason.
Bob Nightingale officially rated the Orioles trade for Jack Flaherty as a fabulous move.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Good old fabulous from Bob Nightingale.
Love it.
Some other comments. Michael, appreciate the Sox Machine trade deadline show. Nice to get that White Sox spin on things. Thank you guys so much for joining us as we're about 7 minutes away from the trade deadline. So this is where things get a little overwhelming on my end, just trying to keep track of like continue to host this live stream and continue the conversation while continuing to keep an eye on things. We, from our Patreon as well. So if you enjoy our work, you could help support us over at Patreon. A little shameless plug here. We have a group chat. We have a level called the Veterans Committee. It's kind of like our board of directors. And we have a group chat that those guys have direct contact to Jim and I. And there's been a lot of conversation from our VCs. We do have some spots available. So if you do enjoy our work, you can help support us at patreon.com/Sox Machine. We do have 6 spots still available, part of our Veterans Committee, which you can go to patreon.com/Sox Machine to get more information to apply to be part of our VC group and part of our board of directors. And good questions of like, why is Keenan Middleton still on this team? Like, why has he not been dealt? I mean, listen, he could be cheap. I mean, the White Sox still need relievers for the rest of the season. I guess that's the only explanation that I have. I thought he pitched well enough to possibly get dealt.
Yeah, I guess it's just his July. That would be my biggest, response would be like, perhaps just teams are scared of what they saw and just think he's, on his way. The stuff wasn't special before the White Sox got him, which is why, he was an NRI, and he might have the novelty might have worn off. That's maybe my biggest explanation. Not saying that's, Middleton's done for the rest of the season, but just that would be my biggest reason why, like, just there's nothing interesting happening for Middleton. And like nobody's even offering like a player to be named later worth following.
As of right now, again, we have 5 minutes left to go before the trade deadline. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us during this Sox Machine live show. I'm Josh Nelson alongside Jim Margulis as we're here to the final stretch. And again, we'll continue after 5 p.m. as the dust settles. We get more word as far as the last minute deals here. Again, Baltimore as the latest move, they acquired Jack Flaherty to add into the rotation. I don't think that moves the needle much. That doesn't give me a lot more confidence. I feel like Flaherty is going to be a target by the White Sox this upcoming offseason as someone that might need a 1-year prove-it deal if he does not pitch better for Baltimore in August and September, and that kind of reunites if Ethan Katz is still the pitching coach for the White Sox after this season. So again, if you guys are seeing things that are coming in, definitely let me know. I'm seeing that Mark Fine said, so there's growing buzz that the White Sox may trade Dylan Cease. The Dodgers and Orioles seen as favorites if he is moved. So I have seen, as far as now, that tweet, but I don't know if anyone else has been moved. Tommy Pham, again, to the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's been the other big move.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing a lot of...
Romero has said that Cesar Prieto is heading back to the Cardinals in the Flaherty trade. More players are involved. Like, it's just a case where, like, Romero is a Cuban reporter, so he's got the, connections for the Cuban players, but it seems like it's just not just Prieto.
Yes. Okay. So that's where we're at. So we're about 3 minutes away. So I guess I'll put you on the spot, Jim. Dylan Cease, do we hear a trade in the next, let's say, 5 minutes?
Maybe in the next, I'll say 15 minutes, just because like there are some deals that officially that they get to the commissioner's desk in time, but it takes a little bit of time to filter out. So I'll say yes.
Okay. All right. That's bold.
Yeah. But I'm going to give it to like 5:15, I think.
We are getting some, breaking news here. Thank you guys so much in the comments section. Ed, Casey, Clutch Chat, Joe, Keenan Middleton to the New York Yankees. That pipeline still exists, Jim.
Yes.
The Yankees love them some White Sox relievers.
Yep. So, like, how is Ian Hamilton doing, by the way? I know he goes on the injured list.
I haven't checked on Ian Hamilton. Obviously, we don't have to check on Jimmy Cordero for ever.
For nefarious purposes. But yeah, so it would be Hamilton, Cordero, Canely is there. So
they do, man. They love them some White Sox relievers.
Hamilton's still doing well. He came back from the injury list in fine form. So,
Michael, who do the White Sox get for the Yankees? Aaron Judge. Oh, that would be amazing, but no. So there we go. So that's 2 deals the White Sox have made before the deadline. Middleton to the Yankees, Jake Berger to the Miami Marlins. And yeah, that's the 6th pitcher the White Sox have traded before this deadline. Oh boy. All right. And thanks to our friend Chirizi, who was just on the latest Sox Machine podcast, providing some news. The Dodgers supposedly in on James Paxton, Dylan Cease, and still trying to go for Eduardo Rodriguez, even though he nixed that deal. So it'll be kind of interesting in what's going to be happening there. Jeremy has this question. Tell me we are not picking up Tim Anderson's option next year. I think it's pretty high. If the White Sox are not trading Tim Anderson in the next minute, I think it's pretty high that they will pick up that option, and it opens up the doors, Jim, to either trading him before opening day, or we get to have this conversation next trade deadline. Will the White Sox keep Anderson?
Yeah, I mean, there just isn't a better use of the money. Assuming he continues this hot streak in July and continues like resembling his old form more or less the rest of the way. Like his numbers, I think, are beyond repair for the season. Like they're not going to compare to his last 3 or 4 years, but like if he finishes like July through September looking fine, then yeah, I mean, like the market's dead. So like it would be unwise to decline the option just because money's melting off the books anyway. It's not going to get in the way of anything they're doing.
We got Bob Nightingale tweeting that Dylan Cease is staying in Chicago. He will not be traded.
Okay.
How do we feel?
Yeah, I mean, slightly disappointed, but like he's also not a guy to like if it were the Dodgers and they gave away like Bush and Cartaya, like I'd be kind of like, I don't know. Like, so that's kind of where I'm at. Like, if the Orioles are fine with Flaherty and we're going to move, Holiday was a reach, but like Westberg and Kjerstad and such, like, yeah, I wasn't that impressed with what the Dodgers had.
Yeah, I think what happens if Bob is, as it's currently 5 p.m. Central Time. So we are at the trade deadline. We've got a few minutes here. We'll see what deals trickle in that were completed right before the deadline. I still think Dylan Cease is a great pitcher. I think we're going to have this same exact conversation next year, next calendar year, Jim. I don't think we're going to have this conversation during the offseason because I think there's enough interesting free agent starting pitchers through the tiers of quality that teams would still hold on to their prospects and just pay cash for enhancing their starting rotation. But if Dylan Cease is truly staying with the White Sox, we are going to have this conversation again next July.
Yeah, John Morosi, Dylan Cease not traded. Jeff Passan, Dylan Cease was not traded. Like they're rolling in.
Okay. So, all right. So there we go. So Dylan Cease not traded. So Dylan Cease staying with the Chicago White Sox through this season. And we'll talk more about this in an upcoming Sox Machine podcast as we record later tonight. I think we're going to have the same conversation next year. I don't know when the trade deadline is going to be for 2024, but we're going to have the same exact conversation. And I think the only disappointing thing is, and it's hard to tell on who could be possibly available next year. Corbin Burns for the Milwaukee Brewers enters his last year of arbitration in 2024. So the Brewers are not any good. That could be some competition for the White Sox. With Shohei Ohtani and Blake Snell and Marcus Stroman not on the board, I just felt like this might have been your best shot in getting the best type of return for Dylan Cease. We'll see what happens. You could look at it, glass half full, being optimistic. What if he returns to his Cy Young form early in 2024? Teams may want to overpay. That's absolutely true. You can also look at the other side. What if Dylan Cease gets hurt because he's a pitcher? Then you could be in a tight spot. And again, the White Sox only have team control of Cease through 2024 and in 2025. He is a Scott Boras client, so Dylan Cease will be definitely testing the free agency market after his tenure with the White Sox if he does pitch for the White Sox in 2025. So no Dylan Cease trade. It ends up being right now so far Jake Berger and Keenan Middleton have been traded by the Chicago White Sox before the deadline. We'll see if anybody else has been made. You got the writers already saying that the deadline is over, but they'll get news of trades trickling in over the next few minutes here.
Yeah. Eduardo Rodriguez invoked his no trade clause with the Dodgers, citing a desire to remain closer to family on the East Coast. That's from Fabian Ardaya. And he did have some personal issues that he had to attend to, that he went on the injured list or they went on the restricted list because of some issues. So yeah, that might be looming larger than it would be than just like, I don't want to play for a contender. I'd rather take it easy. Like he's had some issues, I think.
Yeah, we got this comment from Philip Moore. If there is no late news, I got to say I'm super disappointed. I just don't know what, with Dylan Cease now staying with the White Sox, I don't know what other moves they could possibly make. Maybe Yasmani Grandal got dealt at the last minute. You just traded Keenan Middleton. I'm running out of guys here. I don't think Tim Anderson got dealt. I don't think Eloy Jimenez got dealt.
Yeah. Nightingale said there are usually about 5 to 10 trades that will come down after the deadline, but the White Sox say that Dylan Cease is staying put. They plan to contend in 2024, not rebuild.
Yeah. We're going to spend a lot of time in the podcast recording tonight talking about that particular comment. And I talked about it in yesterday's podcast as well. Like I think that's just gaslighting. And as you can see in the comment section, nobody believes that.
Yeah, I can. Like, I guess we'll talk about it later, but yeah, my instinct right now is to say, like, not, contend necessarily, but not tear it down. Like, not go any further, like do a retrenching versus like a tear down and rebuild. Like, this is more along the lines of just like, we're done subtracting and we're going to try to push with what we have and see where it goes. But like, yeah, so I would say like they're no longer in reverse with the moves they're making, but how much, how further forward they can go remains to be seen.
Well, their car has 3 wheels. So that's kind of where they're at right now.
The stablest form.
Yes. Dan Hayes reporting the Twins did not make any moves. So with the deadline being passed, they stand pat, still leading the American League Central. The Mets traded Dominic Leone to the Angels. So another guy that the Angels have acquired. Man, that's like 8 players the Angels have acquired. So going down the list here, Ken Rosenthal reported again, Eduardo Rodriguez not traded. He will stay in Detroit. He's got an opt-out situation, so that'll be kind of interesting. I wonder how the Tigers front office feels right now with Rodriguez staying. I think publicly they'll say, yeah, we like Rodriguez and we appreciate that he wants to stay with us, but I guess it really depends on what that return possibly could have been for the Dodgers. Maybe that would have been more helpful than just holding on to Eduardo Rodriguez. So be interesting to see on what happens as far as the Detroit. Paul mentioned weird Clevenger wasn't traded. We don't know yet. So again, we're waiting to see what happened in the last minute here. I feel like we're on a 15-minute delay. Is that fair to say, Jim?
Yeah,
as far as what's being reported.
Still have to wait for Middleton's return. So yeah, that's a loose end.
So Will Thrasher put up a comment. What does the starting pitching free agent market look like if indeed the White Sox intend to compete? And so you got like Michael Lorenzen is available. I think that could be a target for the White Sox. I mentioned Jack Flaherty. We think that Marcus Stroman is still going to opt out. So he'll be part of the free agency market along with Lucas Giolito. Blake Snell is going to be a free agent. Aaron Nola is going to be a free agent as well. And of course, Shohei Ohtani, which Ohtani's like in his own separate market. So I think those are the 4 big names outside of Ohtani on the starting pitching front. And then it's a lot of question marks, guys that are about the $10 to $20 million range that the White Sox could add. But right now I made this joke on Twitter, and I'm glad that everybody found it as like a joke and they're running with it. But your probable rotation for the White Sox in 2024 right now is Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech, Tuki Tuasan, Jesse Schultens, and you, random fan, get an opportunity every 5th game to pitch for the Chicago White Sox. Like, that's what it is right now. Maybe Clevenger, but there's a mutual option. The White Sox need to opt in. Clevenger needs to opt in. If neither party does, it's $4 million going to Clevenger, and he could test free agency and maybe try to get a multi-year deal instead of just pitching on a 1-year contract. So I think there are some possibilities for the White Sox, but they're going to have to spend $25 million to add 2 more pitchers to the rotation, and they're not guaranteed things into their starting rotation, and they still got to address second base. They still got to address the situation right field. Hopefully Oscar Colas bounces back. This is where it gets incredibly hazy. The clouds get very dark when I start talking about the 2024 White Sox. Like, you just unload, and we haven't even talked about the bullpen yet for the White Sox, which I don't want them to spend money on a bullpen, but they need to develop some guys that can actually get outs in the bullpen. There's just so much work to be done. I don't trust the front office to do that work because they're not very good at spending money. And if you want the White Sox to surprise everyone and contend in 2024 and what is expected to be another weak American League Central, I get that, but you kind of need an owner that's got an appetite for spending serious cash, and you need a front office that's pretty creative and try to address these many holes to get this team back into shape where they could be at least 500 next year. And man, I don't know. I just don't have a lot of confidence in that, Jim.
Yeah, Matt asked in the comments, like, any recent updates on Liam Hendricks, and not yet. What I'm reminded of is that Bob Nightingale said that the White Sox would pick up Hendricks's option for next year. Like, he's basically guaranteed, like, I think it's 15 million or 10 years of 1.5 million of deferred salary. I could see like a case where like they pick him up, hope he's fine, perhaps flip him, or just, get the salary over and done with and off their books. Like, I can't tell if it's a case where like they feel like he'll be back and they want to contend with him in the back end of the bullpen, or they just want to, be done with it so that the payroll's a little less cluttered when they really look to push. Like, that's what I can't quite tell right now. It is a little bit, cold, after the cancer battle and after the, arm issue, coming back from it, to say like, yeah, we're going to probably cut him after next year, the way like Nightingale said they have no interest in keeping Giolito. So they're going to trade him if they're not contending. Like, I think they're probably not so callous as do that. So I am genuinely wondering, like which way they go, because I can see it happening both ways, especially if they have some money to spend, but really don't see it a path where like spending $30 million to solve 4 or 5 spots isn't going to get it done. And they just decide to just spend on Hendricks and see if they can flip him.
There will be interest. Clutch Hat, don't act like Bush, Eder, Nastrini, Thompson, and Mena don't exist. I'm sorry. Thompson and Mena have been terrible this year for the White Sox.
Mena's been fine for the age, but up and down.
Fine for the age, but he needs more time in Double-A.
Yeah.
Kai Bush allowed 12 hits and 7 runs, didn't strike anyone out in his first appearance with Birmingham. Like, I optimistic with these guys. They need time. Mm-hmm. They need more time to develop in Double-A. They haven't shown that they're ready to help the White Sox in the major leagues in 2024. Maybe they do that at the beginning part of 2024, but I don't think any of those guys are part of the conversation. Maybe Nastrini, maybe him, but everyone else is a no for me as far as being part of the White Sox plans and being their starting rotation to at least start the season in 2024. So yeah, I get this. I got the recent updates on Liam Hendricks. Little Yumper helping us out. According to Craig Mish, the Marlins have acquired Josh Bell from Cleveland.
I get that more for Cleveland because they just acquired,
the guy from Tampa.
Yeah. So that seemed like they had 3 guys for 2 spots. Now they have 2 guys for 2 spots in the big picture.
Shane Harmon, our friend down in New Zealand, Gene Segura to the Cleveland Guardians. Sure. So that's the trade. Josh Bell for Gene Segura. What weird trades this year for Cleveland. Like, I like the Aaron Savali trade, but they traded Ahmad Rosario for Noah Syndergaard. And now they just trade Josh Bell for Gene Segura. And they still might win the American League Central. Like, they're not out of it. That's the crazy thing about Cleveland right now. And the AL Central.
I'm confused. So Rosenthal had like Marlins acquired Josh Bell from the Padres for Garrett Cooper, but like, oh, so he deleted that. So it might be somebody else. So let's see. Oh, okay. Marlins acquired Josh Bell from Guardians. So is Garrett Cooper the one going back, or did he have that wrong?
I think he had that wrong.
Okay.
Passon's reporting Bell to
Yeah.
Miami for Gene Segura and infield prospect Khalil Watson. And the White Sox have put it out onto their official Twitter, Jake Eder from Miami Marlins in exchange for Jake Berger, a Jake for Jake trade.
So now we're just waiting for Middleton.
And
okay, there it is. Yep. Joel Sherman and I believe mentioned Trey Williams in the comments saying that Juan Corella, high A starting pitcher. So let's take a quick look at him.
I don't know the Yankees farm system very well.
So Juan Corella, 21-year-old, currently pitching in high A for Hudson Valley. Numbers are encouraging so far. 109 strikeouts against 32 walks over 83 in the third innings. 3.67 ERA. So two pipeline.
While you do that, so TJ bring up the other parts. We talked a lot about the pitching situation for the White Sox in 2024. TJ brings up the point. Really seems like the White Sox are going to try to run it back position player wise, minus Jake Berger now in 2024. So much positional dysfunction. And yeah, I mean, if they're going to contend, if that's what they're selling, then you're selling on Andrew Vaughn being better than what he is, because if they're going to try to pitch the idea that Andrew Vaughn is good, he is not. Especially when you compare him to other first basemen in Major League Baseball, he's way below average. Tim Anderson's going to need a bounce back year. Yohan Moncada, I don't know what he's going to be moving forward, but he's not a $24 million third baseman, and that's what he's going to be paid next year. You still got questions at second base. You're going to have questions at catcher if you're going to run with Seby Zavala and Carlos Perez. And I did see this earlier, tweeted out that the Royals are not going to be trading Salvador Perez before the deadline, but the White Sox have interest. That's going to be the big move. I'm calling it now. The White Sox are going to acquire Salvador Perez during this offseason. And that might bring back like 10% of the White Sox fan base into believing the team's going to contend because Pedro gets his guy, Jim. You love it. Don't shake your head. You know?
Like who? I'm wondering like what side that was. I'm hoping nobody in the White Sox said like, "Hey, we really want to get Sal Perez," because that doesn't make him look good. I mean, and the White Sox are obtuse enough, I think, organizationally to understand like wanting Sal Perez, wanting a Pedro Grifol guy, like wanting like a veteran leadership transplant, which the White Sox have rejected before.
Yeah. But leadership's a big deal, Jim.
Yeah. So Juan Corella, not in Baseball America's top 30, but he is number 29 on MLB Pipelines. Signed for $335,000 in July 2018. Fastball ranges from 90 to 96. Throws both kinds of fastballs. Throws two kinds of sliders. So seems like he's somebody like not a bad return for Middleton. Just somebody who like has
lottery ticket.
Yeah, lottery ticket. But in terms of like he's got, I like hearing just based on a couple paragraphs. Like I do like hearing like a guy has two fastballs and two breaking balls because like okay, pick one. Like see if he can develop one versus like he's sinker slider only and. It's a case of just like trying to maximize or add velocity or movement, like a case where like it might be, kind of whittling it down.
Brent, I don't see any reports that Perez can't play right field. He's got the arm.
Second base. I want to see Sal Perez in the pivot.
Jay Berg, Luis Arias to Boston. So the Red Sox make a minor move. The Red Sox acquiring infielder Luis Arias from the Milwaukee Brewers. The Marlins acquiring Ryan Weathers from the Padres for Garrett Cooper.
Yeah, Patino's official now. The White Sox sent that out.
I'm like constantly refreshing Twitter. Be like, Get me more information. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that video, Joe. W Sox, as far as Daryl Van Schouwen posted a video of Jake Berger discussing the trade, visibly emotional. I bet. Can
you share that on your screen? Can we all watch it together?
You won't be able to hear the audio.
Okay, gotcha.
I would need to.
Like
I would need to do some technical things of just like.
We need rights to the video.
Yeah, capturing the video.
Expressed written consent.
It'll be 5:30 before I could get that up and going, but.
Okay, there's Garrett Cooper going. So Rosenthal had right people going out of Miami, but not for the rights player going in.
And the Dodgers add to their pitching depth. They acquire Ryan Yarbrough. Man, they really wanted a lefty. Yeah, things are just, again, trickling in. I really appreciate everybody hopping on with us. Again, it's 5:20. We'll take you guys until 10 minutes here, till 5:30. John, thank you so much for the tip. Greatly appreciated. Feels like management. John. Feels like management are like a private equity firm that excels at buying up a struggling company and selling it for parts. Kind of.
Cutting their way to growth. Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah, just... Yeah. I like the comments about Salvador Perez. Perez is just what the White Sox need. He's got tons of speed and walks a ton. I see we got to get him. That's the way it's going to be all off season. I'm telling you, I feel it in my bones. December 8th, 2023, the White Sox are trading for. Or that won't even be the winter meetings. That'll be a couple days after the winter meetings. So I should probably push that forward, that the White Sox acquire Salvador Perez during the winter meetings, which are going to be in Nashville.
Yeah, we'll probably be there.
Yes.
So live screaming. Live screaming.
Jim will be screaming. I will be laughing.
Yeah. Well, it's, yeah, I just.
Oh, love it. Theo Davis.
Like Grifol couldn't do it themselves, so he needs like a co-manager kind of. That's how I would take it.
Yep. Theo Davis. We still have Aaron Bummer. For the time being, we do. Like again, the comments have been awesome today. Thank you guys so much. Aaron Bummer's untouchable. Shane, I have joined the Scott Boras huddle in San Diego in 2019. That was a experience, I would say. Everyone should experience it once, and that is all. I compare it to the Battle of the Bastards at Game of Thrones. If you remember that episode when everybody is like, I don't think you know this episode, Jim, but everyone's tangled together and everyone's shoulder to shoulder. And it's kind of hard to breathe and you can't hear Scott Boras. That's what it was. Scott Boras press conference. No one could hear anything. Yeah. So anything else down the pipeline, Jim, as far as any other deals?
Not see anything like Yarbrough to the Royals or to the Dodgers from the Royals.
Mitch Keller was not traded according to John Morosi. I didn't even know he was available. We got this question from GM. What is the percentage chance that Jerry Reinsdorf re-signs Dylan Cease realistically? 0.1%.
In his current form, yes. If Cease like needs to settle for like a 1 year, make good deal at some point due to surgery or something like that, then maybe.
If Dylan Cease stops being good, if Dylan Cease needs Tommy John surgery, it increases. So I think things are slowing down. I guess we're not. I see the Jake Berger video. It's hit my timeline right now. He does not look happy. I'm not saying he looks angry. He just looks a bit sad. The Padres have acquired the Royals closer Scott Barlow. So that's according to Mark Feinsand. So the Padres continue to add, and again, bringing this back up, the National League is in a weird spot here as far as the wild card standings. It is very wild, and I'll remove the banner so you can see the bottom part because that's hiding the San Diego Padres. The Padres are the very bottom here. They continue to add, so the Padres are not quitting. At 52 and 55, they're still in this according to their thoughts, and they do have a talented roster to make a run. But we've said that about another team, Jim, and that never came to fruition. As the Padres are 5 games back of the wild card, but they still believe they're in it, and they're still going to continue to try.
Yeah, I'm looking at the. I'm curious, like with the Royals, like selling the useful players from their bullpen, like. How low can they go?
Right. Yeah. That I could share. Hold on. Let me bring up Tankathon here for a moment. Oh man. I feel like I'm going to be visiting this site a lot. All right. This is great streaming here when I click on the share screen and it just takes forever. Okay, here we go. So hopefully, as soon as it loads up, this feels like a Zoom call, like a corporate meeting. Yeah, so right now the White Sox, as it gets loaded up here, again, they're the 4th worst record in Major League Baseball, so they're ahead of the Washington Nationals in the Tankathon by a couple games. They're half game back of Colorado. What you should be paying attention to is the odds of the right side. So right now the White Sox have a 13.25% chance of having the number 1 overall pick. So Oakland, Kansas City, Colorado. If you're in the bottom 3, you have the same odds of having the number 1 pick, and the best chances at 16.5%. The 4th worst team gets 13.25. The 5th worst gets 10%, and so on and so forth. So let's sim the lottery, Jim. It's a big lottery night anyways. And the White Sox in the lottery get the 7th overall pick.
Feels right.
When I did the lottery, they dropped 3 spots. The New York Mets, man.
Yeah, Colorado sold off some pieces. They sold off Randall Grichuk, bullpen reliever. So they're trying to improve their odds.
So it's not guaranteed. Like, yes, the White Sox have the 4th worst record right now, and people would say, oh, they have the 4th overall pick. Again, it's a draft lottery. So you go to tankathon.com/MLB and you can play around with the tool. But yeah, just simming the lottery, the White Sox, bad luck, would drop from the 4th spot to the 7th overall pick in the 2024 draft. When I did the
my first click had them 2nd. So second behind.
There you go. That's how I'm going to be doing mock drafts next year for Sox Machine. This is the Tankathon. And this is where the White Sox are picking, and this is how the mock would look if they do well or if they don't do well, as far as in the Tankathon. So that's what we get to play with the rest of the season. Is every day you can see where the White Sox would be in the 2024 Major League Baseball draft. But that's kind of, in the last couple of minutes here, the live stream, what to look forward to for the rest of August and September and the regular season for the Chicago White Sox. I think there's going to be a lot of attention on Tim Anderson to see if he continues to bounce back, as they do have the club option that they need to consider, and what they want to do with Anderson in the very near future as far as if he could be possibly traded in the offseason. But until we see anything else coming down the pipeline as far as being reported of any other White Sox players being traded, it does appear that the White Sox may be done here. They were quite busy before the trade deadline, lots of trades. I don't know if they made. I think Dylan Cease was the only one that could have provided real impact to the White Sox chances in 2024 at the very least. What I think they have acquired, Jim, is that they have acquired more starting pitchers to build up depth in Double-A, to give them a chance to understand if these guys could help out in a future rotation. But the White Sox leave this trade deadline with more question marks than they have answers for with their upcoming problems. So that's why I still shake my head when they're trying to sell everyone that they plan on contending next year.
Yeah, I think when you look at how most of these prospects are concentrated around Double-A, that would put them on like a 2025 timeline. Maybe not to debut. Maybe they're like second half of 2024, September call-ups,
Right.
whatnot. But in terms of like feeling like you might know what you're going to get from them, like 2025 would be the start of that, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. Better than like tearing it all down and saying, we don't know when we're going to get better. We hope we have a couple top 5 picks that help us steer us out of this. Like I think the timetable's fine, especially like Colson Montgomery, Brian Ramos. Colson Montgomery just got back at Double-A. Ramos on and off the injured list. He's now off the injured list again. So Birmingham should finally be, thankfully for Kurt Bloom, like Birmingham should have some action people want to follow. So that's probably the affiliate to watch the rest of the way to understand what's going on. I think what's most interesting to me, at the major league level is like, what's Pedro Grifol going to do the rest of the way? Like with like Dylan Cease not traded, Tim Anderson not traded, like, are they going to be engaged? Are they going to be like, as the rest of the roster kind of crumbles around them, if Grandal gets waived or, DFA'd and goes somewhere for nothing, or if, Andrews does, what have you, like, and they're running out Zach Remillard and Jesse Schultens and, Lenine Sosa and all these other guys, like, how is he going to maintain whatever kind of control he has? And are the White Sox really going to go into another season with hopes of contending, ends up being like an 100-loss season?
He wants to build a culture, Jim. That's what he's going to be focusing on.
It's like they tried that last time. I mean, that was part of the rebuild. The reason why they rebuilt was because, they did have that big cluster in the clubhouse a couple times, whether it was Adam LaRoche or Todd Frazier and Adam Eaton fighting. Like they had that. And so they, part of the reason for rebuilding was, let's get all these guys in the clubhouse together in the minor leagues so they won't hate each other by the time they come up. And I guess that worked, but also like still didn't have like the kind of, self-sustaining, self-healing organizational culture that helped them like actually be better ball players. So yeah, it's culture. I just shrug at, like, and just, it's a word to explain like, just the complete lack of tangible evidence that there is something to like about this team next year.
If you want to build culture, go coach college baseball. That's what I have to say about that. The White Sox updated lineup for tonight. Again, first pitch is at 7 o'clock between the White Sox and the Texas Rangers. Tim Anderson at shortstop, Yohan Makata batting second at third, Luis Robert at center field, Eloy Jimenez DH, Andrew Benintendi in left field, Andrew Vaughn batting. He'll be batting sixth tonight at first base, Oscar Colas at right field, Elvis Andrews takes over for Jake Berger at second base. He'll be batting eighth, and Sebi Zavala will be batting ninth. So again, first pitch for the White Sox and the Texas Rangers is at 7 o'clock. I'm sure these will be very competitive games for the White Sox against the Texas Rangers in Arlington. Jim and I will be recording a new podcast later tonight. That'll be in your guys' feed tomorrow morning to recapping all the White Sox activities and try to answer the questions that I think we all have on what to expect for the rest of this season and what to expect going into the offseason, what 2024 actually looks like for the Chicago White Sox, not what the White Sox are trying to sell everyone and maybe even trying to sell themselves on what they are hoping to do next season. But I really appreciate everyone that joined us over the last couple of hours during the live stream for this year's 2023 MLB Trade Deadline. This is always a lot of fun for us with all the flurry of fast news that's coming in as far as all the moves that are happening. We got to see the breaking news of Jake Berger getting traded to Miami and Keenan Middleton traded to the New York Yankees. If you enjoy our work, or if you just discovered the Sox Machine and the Sox Machine podcast and our YouTube channel, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at Sox Machine. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already at youtube.com/Sox Machine. And we do have a podcast that you can subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. And again, if you enjoy our work and you want more, you get more by becoming a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/socksmachine, where we have monthly plans starting at $2, or you could save with an annual subscription. Sox Machine Live is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for watching.